Hey everyone, Brad Thorpe here from Isophit. Welcome to another edition of Isophit Q&A. So today's question is, can Isophit help train my psoas? Now the interesting thing is, when you start getting into muscle specifics, you can emphasize muscle tissues with Isophit. You can't isolate muscles just because that's near impossible unless you're Botoxing things to get them out of the equation. But understanding where the muscle lives is imperative to answering that question, can I train this muscle tissue? So let's just jump over to the skeleton over here. So what we're going to do is we're kind of wanting to know where basically it exists. So the psoas muscle goes from T12, which is way up here, so that's that 12th rib, so that's that 12th vertebrae of your thoracic spine, comes all the way down here to what's called your lesser trochanter of your femur. So it's all down through here. So you guys can kind of get a picture of that, just the magnitude of that muscle. Now, here's the important part. So the important part is understanding that it is the only muscle, psoas minor, okay, included in this comment. But the psoas major and the psoas minor are the only two muscles on the anterior surface of your lumbar spine. Let that resonate for a second. If you have a weak psoas, if it doesn't have muscular endurance and stability, you are choosing to leave your lower spine unstable. You are choosing to impair your ability to sit up at a desk. Yes, your psoas is hugely important. They usually hate on that muscle saying, oh, there's adaptive shortening. How about you've never trained it, so it's actually just weak, and you can't actually flex your hip to 90 degrees. So speaking of which, I'm going to show you an exercise over here on the MSK to show you how to train that tissue. But before I do that, I got to move the skeleton out of the way so he's not in the way, because we try to do so much stuff to help educate you guys. So one of the things that you can think about when training your psoas, we're going to show you option one, right? That's hip flexion at, let's say, 90 degrees. Now you can see how this bar is way far away from that muscle I just showed you, right? You can see that point of application's up by my knee. So that's really, to be honest, not a great exercise to target your psoas. So what we're going to do is we're going to spin around. Now, I just got to adjust my placement here. So what I want you to do is basically get as close to this hip axis as I can. And if you can't straighten your leg up with, your knee totally straight, that's totally fine. But what I want you to do is get really close, and here's the massive benefit to the Isophit MSK. So I can get really close to that hip axis, right? So you can see how it's not very far up my femur. So I can start targeting that psoas. And the reason I'm externally rotated is because that psoas muscle beyond 60 degrees really becomes almost like a hip external or an external hip rotator. So I can start to pull in through there. Now, from a get yourself stuck in this position, pull that out. What you can also do is you can also train that psoas tissue standing. Now, it gets a little bit more challenging because you have to start worrying about your balance and structure. So I can sort of stand here and really drive that hip up, right? And I can add a little bit of external rotation. So similar to what we just did on the ground, right? So driving all the way up. Now, just also to let you know, that bar position was really pushed down on my stomach. But what we can do is also standing here, bringing up at different angles. Now, you can see how my femur is less than 60 degrees. For that, I'm going to have to internally rotate to target my psoas a little bit. Now, it's going to pull out your TFL a little bit, but that's okay. When you start to try to emphasize tissues, I can sort of use the sidewall over here. I can drive that up and externally rotate into, so now I'm combining the forces. So I'm restraining the external rotation. I'm also restraining the hip flexion. Anyways, those are a couple different exercises we can do for your psoas. And what we want to do, parting notes, train your psoas. What you'll find is your spine gets pulled forward. See how my shoulders come back in space when I pull my anterior surface of my spine forward? That now sort of lays perfectly. So when I go to type, I'm not sort of slouched over here. The reason you slouch is because you don't have that ability to pull your anterior surface of your spine forward. So think about that for a little bit. Fix your shoulder pain because you fix your psoas. Neck pain, psoas is very important. Stabilizes the lower portion of the spine. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode of Isophit Q&A.